I have been riding for 20 plus years at this point, and I actually don't consider myself a good rider. Maybe I'm just being hard on myself, being a bit of a perfectionist, but yeah, I do not consider myself a good rider. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Strong in the Saddle. I'm your host Katrina. And a couple of weeks ago, I did an episode on whether your horse is broke or not. And I based that entire episode off of a subreddit talking about that subject. And I thought I really enjoyed doing the episode like that. So I thought today we would dig into another Reddit post, this one on what makes a good rider. And I will start by reading the initial post and then we can go from there. I'm very curious to see where this one goes. So the person says, hope I can post this here. I've been sitting with this thought, and whenever I ask this to anyone, I get snarky or short comments like, you just know how to. You cannot ride if you are fat or short. You cannot learn if you don't go to a riding school. You should not own a horse if you cannot ride. Only real equestrians can own horses. You can only be good with horses if you're born with the trait, and so many more. And I thought, what makes a good rider, a good equestrian? I've met some people who have ridden their whole life and others who just started, and they are amazing riders and equestrians. I have seen people own horses and not ride them. I've seen people who just got their first horse and never went to riding school and are good at it. But I mostly read/hear the hate from other equestrians or horse lovers who bash people for doing their thing, their own business. Why not teach instead of hating on a person for doing something you think is wrong? So I guess my question is for you who have read this, what do you think makes a good rider/equestrian? There's a lot to get into with this one. So I would say that this initial post, it kind of has two trains of thought, I would say. I'll quickly touch on the first one, and then I want to dig into what makes a good rider. So the first kind of trail that I think this question goes down is maybe not a question, but just commenting on people being very, very judgmental in the equestrian industry about things like whether you're a good rider, if someone who's fat or short can learn to ride, if you should even own a horse if you don't know how to ride properly, people who own horses but don't ride them, like all these things, and people getting hate for what they are or are not doing. And that's just one of the negative aspects of the internet. I think you're going to find that, like, yes, in the equestrian industry, but also like all over the place. And unfortunately on the internet, people feel like they can just say whatever the heck that they want to. And so yeah, people get, I would say, bullied about what they are or are not doing with their horses. I will be completely honest, when I post videos of me riding, I'm hesitant. I still post it, but there's definitely something in the back of my mind that is like, what are people gonna say? If someone a bit more experienced than me looks at this video, are they gonna think I'm a terrible rider? Like, are they gonna be judging me? And I would say that comes from a fair place because yes, the equestrian industry judges people terribly, and the internet is just mean, right? It's like being in high school all over again. So I just wanted to just be nice, let people do what they want to do with their horses, assuming they're not abusing them, there's no sort of like animal welfare issue. Just let people do what they want with their horses. It doesn't hurt to give people suggestions if they're open to suggestions, but beyond that, let people do what they want to do with their horses. That's all I'm going to say on that part of it. So before we get into some of the comments, I will say right off the bat, I have not looked at the comments on this post, so I'm very curious to see what people say. But I just kind of wanted to talk briefly about, I think it's called the stages of learning or something like that. So there's these 4 stages. When you're a very beginner, you are unconscious incompetent, which means You do not know what you do not know. This would be someone that's like, say, a city slicker, and they decide they want to start riding. Like, they have no idea what they're getting into, just no idea. Once someone gets into something, starts learning a bit, they become conscious incompetent, which means they now realize how much they do not know. And they're still at the stage where they do not know the things, but they are aware that there's this gap here. As they progress, they move to conscious competence, which means they've started to learn the things, but it takes like a lot of effort to be able to do them. Like, they have to like really think about it. I think a good example of this would be just like a kid starting to learn a bicycle. Like, initially you have to like, or actually lots of people use the example of driving a car. Like, when you're first learning to drive a car, you're doing the thing, but you have to like really concentrate on it. Eventually you get to a stage where you are unconscious competence, which means you can do the thing without really even having to think about it. Like, it's super easy. So if we go back to the example of driving a car, you can be like, I don't know, putting your makeup on while you're driving, listening to a podcast, and like sipping your smoothie for breakfast. Like, you have all these things going on, and you're still able to safely or unsafely drive your vehicle. So a very similar thing happens with horses as well, and it applies to basically anything that a person is trying to learn. And I would say you can be in several spots at the same time, because I was thinking about this and I was like, where do I fall? And I would say there are some aspects with horses where I would definitely say I'm at the level of unconscious competence. Like, I could do it with my eyes closed. But then there's other things where like I'm just starting to get it and I really have to think hard as I'm doing it, but I know the steps that need to be done to do the thing. And then there's other things where I am aware of my shortfalls, but I'm not really sure how to do the thing, like how to bridge that gap to become competent. So like, depending on what aspect of being an equestrian, being a rider you're looking at, I may fall in different levels of that spectrum. So hopefully that makes sense. I would say becoming a good rider is very, what that means is very much open to interpretation, very, I would say, discipline specific. Obviously really, really experienced riders, they're going to be able to basically excel regardless of the discipline, regardless of the horse. I don't think you need to be at that level to be considered a good rider. So there is definitely a spectrum of what a good rider could look like. But yeah, one thing I know is it takes a lot of time invested to become a good rider. And I think that's something that all of us can agree on. Just gonna take a sip of my coffee as we dig into the comments, because I'm sure they're gonna be good. I love this coffee mug, by the way. I inherited it from my dad when he passed away. It's got John Wayne on it. It's a massive cup. It's like the size of my head. And then it says, a man's got to have a code, a creed to live by. And then it's got John Wayne's signature. I love it. I am drinking black, bold roast, nabob drip coffee. Okay, let us get into the comments. First one, right off the bat. I firmly do not think people can be self-taught riders. You keep mentioning riding schools almost as if they are a waste of time and money. Riding is difficult. It is a skill that needs to be taught. People learn in different ways, but you need some kind of guidance and eyes on the ground when you are learning to ride. Can a person with decent balance learn to stay on? Yes. Are they going to be unknowingly in chair seat or pulling on their horse's mouth or letting the horse go around hollow in the back? Most likely. And that causes long-term issues for the horse in some cases. I don't think you need to take a lesson every week for the rest of your life to be a good equestrian, though I do think everyone would benefit from it. Lifelong learning is the sign of a good equestrian to me. Accepting you do not know everything about horses and riding and never will, and are willing to keep learning every day. This comment is so spot on. And like I was just discussing earlier, like this totally touches on the whole unconscious incompetent thing. When you are first learning to ride, you do not know what you do not know. Like a beginner rider might not even know what chair seat is, right? And one thing I've definitely learned from filming myself is how you are actually riding and what you actually look like are two very different things. You might think you're not sitting in chair seat, but then you film yourself and you're like definitely in chair seat. Like it's bizarre how what you think you're feeling and how things actually look are so different. And that's just an example of why an instructor is really, really important, particularly when you are first learning to ride. And I would say it does not hurt to have an instructor as the years go on. I follow Amelia Newcomb, and if you do not, please follow Amelia Newcomb. She is dressage specific, but she is, whether you're in, I don't care what discipline you're in, you need to follow her. Anyways, she is very, very good. She's a Grand Prix dressage rider. I feel like I'm constantly hearing about her going and taking lessons from, I can't remember what his name is. He's some sort of like European dressage guy, I'm pretty sure. But like she is a Grand Prix dressage rider and she's still taking lessons. And that's a perfect example of acknowledging that you will never know everything. And it's also good to have a second set of eyes on you, regardless of how experienced you are. For me, when I first started riding, I went into 4-H basically immediately. I think we got Brandy in the summer sometime, and I was in 4-H. 4-H, the year starts October 1st. So like I basically immediately started in 4-H and had my leaders teaching me. And then I also moved into private lessons, and I've taken private lessons and clinics throughout the years. And exciting news, I just signed up with a coach yesterday because I acknowledge like I have so much to learn, and especially with diesel not being finished on top of that, like I need a coach. And this commenter is 100% correct. Like to become a self-taught rider is pretty difficult. I wouldn't say it's impossible. There's definitely a thing about like just being naturally gifted to ride a horse, but it does not hurt to get instruction. And I think if you're wanting to maybe shortcut getting better as a rider, I would definitely suggest getting some sort of coach or riding instructor or something like that. Next comment. In general, people should take lessons and learn how to care for a horse from a riding school before ever owning one, which usually comes with riding. In general, some people will pick up riding much faster than others. I'll just pause there for a second. So saying they should take lessons before they have their own horse, I would say that's probably a fair comment. There's quite a bit involved with owning and caring for a horse. And again, if you don't know what you don't know, like you could buy Horses for Dummies, that yellow book. But there's so much to learn that I feel like it would not hurt to take lessons at a stable or something, maybe lease a horse there with some other people and like get to familiarize yourself with what horse care looks like before all of a sudden you have it all dumped in your lap by owning a horse yourself. So I think that's good advice. And then continuing on with this comment, I don't think anyone who just started is a good equestrian, honestly. The applied experience that you need just isn't there. It's possible to never get lessons and buy a horse and be whatever your definition of successful is, but very few people will do it, and it's dangerous when it doesn't work out. Good equestrians are safe riders or owners who care for their horses to the best of their ability and in accordance with the majority of best practices. Their horses have good manners and they are loved. So by that definition, I'm a good equestrian, I guess. So that's going back to like, what is the definition of a good equestrian or a good rider? I don't know. They do have a good point here about experience. So the original comment did talk about how they've seen people who are fairly new to horses be just naturally good at it. There's definitely something to that, but again, experience goes a long way as well. Developing feel, the elusive feel, takes, I feel like, a long time. And yes, some people may pick it up faster than others, but it still takes time and experience learning from a horse or various horses. And I think there isn't really a substitute for just experience and long rides. One thing that popped into my mind, Clinton Anderson, in regards to training a horse, he talks about them needing long rides, wet saddle blankets, and concentrated training. So like just time being rode, wet saddle pads, meaning that like they're putting in the work, hard rides sometimes, and concentrated training. So like doing specific things to train that horse. And I think something similar applies to the rider as well. Like you need just long rides, like lots and lots and lots of just plain old experience in various situations. You need wet saddle pads, meaning like putting in the work, not just sitting and like being a sack of potatoes on your horse, and concentrated training. So like doing specific things to advance yourself as a rider, because it is very easy to just not do anything real specific or anything that's gonna like push you along as a rider and just kind of get stuck doing the same thing all the time. But yes, experience definitely cannot be substituted. I would agree with this commenter. Another commenter said, the reason we say only real equestrians can own horses is not some weird gatekeeping. We say that because horses are large, potentially dangerous, often fragile animals. It's no different than handing your kid the keys to a car without giving them lessons and taking them for their driver's test. So again, that's going back to me saying it wouldn't hurt to like take lessons at a barn or something before actually owning your own horse, because there is a lot to know. A real equestrian is someone who puts the horse's needs first, who invests time in learning and improving their knowledge and skills, who makes sure they are as prepared as possible for a situation before they subject themselves and their horses to it. And the majority of people I've known who get a horse with no formal training or mentorship, well, they end up either failing on all those levels, sometimes with disastrous results. And if they stick with it, they'll eventually learn, usually out the hard way, and the horse will suffer from the mistakes along the way. And that's a part of the learning process, sometimes regardless, but why wouldn't you want to minimize the struggle? Absolutely, there are people who have a natural talent for riding and handling horses. That's true of any sport or hobby, but they still can't start from the beginning like anyone else. But they still will start from the beginning like anyone else. Nobody is born knowing the essential information needed to care for a horse safely and responsibly. Acquiring that knowledge may come quicker for some than others. Everyone's journey looks a little different. And I 100% agree. There are some people that will just naturally be good riders, especially someone who has an athletic background. They tend to pick up and be better riders quicker than maybe someone who's maybe a bit more awkward and clumsy, just because it is an athletic endeavor, right? So yes, some people will pick it up faster than others. And again, getting mentorship or training is going to help you just accelerate your progress to being a good rider and may potentially help you avoid mistakes, whether those be small mistakes or like big mistakes that could really set you back, potentially harm yourself or your horse. Like that's why some sort of a trainer or a coach is invaluable. And just going back to like knowledge. Like if you're going to deal with horses, if you want them in your life, you're going to obtain it one way or the other. You can take an easier route or you can take the hard way. That's kind of up to you, I guess. This next comment is really good. So nobody is born with it. Almost every natural instinct a new rider has will be wrong. They tense up, they pull on the reins, they twist the saddle trying to get on, their stirrups are often just adjusted incorrectly, etc. But most people can learn and practice and become competent. There is a lifetime of learning ahead of them. As long as a horse person is taking good care of their horse, that's good enough. As a wise woman once said, worry about yourself. Be so busy learning and doing your best that you don't have time for competitive matters. Don't judge other riders because you do not know their situation. That is a very good point. And going back to like the horse industry being kind of judgy, don't judge other riders because you do not know their situation. If you have someone, I would say for me, I'll use myself as an example. Someone might see me riding and think like, oh, her toes are turned out. Like that's something I'm working on. Her toes are turned out. She should have her toes straighter. They do not know that like, not that long ago, well, it's been a while now, there was a time when I was terrified to even get on a horse, right? So like to go from that to like where I'm at now, that is huge. And if they would know about that amount of progress, they may or may not be less inclined to judge me on where I'm presently at. I am currently reading Jordan Peterson's book, 12 Rules for Life, and one of them, the rule is compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to where others are today, or some variation of that. And I love that because I know, like, especially going on social media, it's very easy for me to look at where someone else is at. Like, I could say, like, look at Sarah Dawson. Like, Sarah Dawson is my idol. She rides so good, and it could be very easy to get discouraged watching her ride. Like, as phenomenal and as awesome as it is to watch her, it can also be discouraging, right? Because I'm like, I will never be as good of a rider as Sarah Dawson. Which, talk about a self-defeating thought, right? Like, who is to say I will never be as good of a rider as Sarah Dawson? 1. 2, there is no point in me comparing myself to Sarah Dawson. It's literally comparing apples to oranges. She has a completely different background than I do, and like, you're not comparing the same thing. The more constructive thing for me to do is to compare where I was yesterday. And like I said, like, there was a time where I was literally sitting in the arena dirt, bawling my eyes out because I was terrified to get on my horse. Like, this was a long time ago already, but like, there was a time where I literally could not bring myself to get on a horse. And the horse I was trying to get on was super quiet. He had never done anything wrong, just would stand stock still and wait for me. And I was still terrified to get on. Still terrified. And now I'm at a point where like I don't even give a thought about getting on. I get on. If my horse spooks sideways, I laugh and I like enjoy the bit of adrenaline that starts pumping through my system. Like, I've come such a long way, and reflecting on that is a lot more useful than comparing myself to Sarah Dawson. It's a lot more empowering to be like, if I can come from crying in the arena dirt to where I'm at now, which I'm not even sure, that was probably probably like 13 years ago. What is the potential for the next 13 years, right? And you start thinking about that, it's like, okay, I could like really get somewhere if I continue to put in that work. Like, I could get to a point where, like, today I would not say I'm a good rider. Like, I'm an okay rider. This is where I'm at right now. Like, there could be a point where I get confident enough in myself to say, I'm a good rider. And like I said, it's a very subjective term, good rider. I think we can identify a good rider. Like, Sarah Dawson's a good rider. Amelia Newcomb's a good rider. Like, the people at the Olympics are good riders. It's a little bit more fuzzy at this amateur level. But yeah, I think I kind of want to leave you with that note. Like, compare yourself to where you were yesterday, not to where someone else is today, because it's just, you're not using the same measuring stick. It's not worth that comparison. And going back to judging other people, it's like, mind your own business, stay in your own lane, put on the blinders, and yeah, get help from coaches. I think that is my best piece of advice. If you're wanting to be a good rider, regardless of what that definition is in your mind, put in the time, stay in your lane, and get some professional help from someone who's a bit further along than you are. So be sure to follow me everywhere at Strong in the Saddle. And until next time, remember, it's always a good day to ride.